the thousands, in the millions, and we will be. Because it starts right here.
Guilty.
Welcome to Naptown People's Radio, a weekly podcast of the Indianapolis branch of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I'm your host, Dani Abdullah, and I'm here with my comrade and my co-host,
Derek Ford.
We're here to guide you through the pressing issues facing Indianapolis from the perspective of the people, not the oppressors. And as organizers involved in these issues, we're not just talking about the news, we're making it happen. Today on Naptown People's Radio, we're going to be getting into a new initiative that just launched today called Mask Off 12. So Mask Off 12 removes the anonymity that these racist killer cops hide behind, informing the people about members of the armed gangs operating in their area. Just to be clear, we're talking about IMPD. We'll also be delving into the shooting that happened this weekend in which 2 teens lost their lives. We'll specifically be digging into the hysteria that the media and the cops are unfolding around the issue of adolescents being outside. Later on, we're going to have our first People's Artist on the show, Matthew Gunning. Gunning was falsely convicted and wrongfully incarcerated for 5 years, during which time he reconnected with his artistic capabilities. We'll talk with Gunning about how art not only helped him make it through his time in prison, but also how it helped break down divisions between prisoners. But before we get to that, we got to get into the Naptown Breakdown. So Derek, what's on deck this week?
Well, let's start off with this past Monday's City County Council meeting, which took place on July 7th. Now, before the meeting started, Jesse Brown said he was going to introduce a proposal to remove President Samuel Osili and Vice President Allie Brown from their position, something we wholeheartedly endorse. Also in related news, Councilor Crista Carlino, who we talked about last segment, stuck to her guns and in a courageous act decided that she was going to step down from the Democratic Party caucus. And for those who weren't able to tune in last week, we talked about how the Democratic Party basically, in front of all of us, displayed their misogyny by forcing her to issue a public apology to bow down before Osili and Hogsett, so she could be let back into the caucus, only to deprive her of any real decision-making capacity. And so good on Councilor Carlino for withdrawing from the caucus. But most importantly, Democratic Councilor Leroy Robinson introduced Proposal 232 in response to what the media, cops, and politicians are calling a mass shooting that took place over this holiday weekend. Now, Prop 232 would criminalize the presence of, quote, unsupervised youth, unquote, in public places, specifically making it a crime for people between 15 and 17 years of age to be in public between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays, and between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. the rest of the week. It would also make it a crime for all people under 15 to be in public between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. every day. The proposition was proposed, and when it goes to the July 16th Public Safety and Criminal Justice Committee meeting, councilors stated that they were going to take it further. They're also planning on criminalizing parents and guardians of, quote, repeat offenders, unquote, by imposing financial penalties or fines and mandating parenting classes. So at the July 5th press conference following the mass shooting, the cops and community misleaders placed the blame on parents. One begged guardians to surveil their kids' social activities. Mayor Joe Hogsett, for his part, his wise wisdom, said, quote, there is no reason a young person should be downtown after hours without parental supervision, period, end quote. Police Chief Chris Bailey mentioned young people, quote, wearing clothes that's not fitting, end quote. Like, what is this, the 1990s?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, what are you about to, like take all the 2 Live Crew CDs and, like, Dr. Dre CDs and bulldoze them with Tipper Gore? I mean, come on. But, you know, he touted his Know Before You Go campaign that was aimed at parents to have them speak about curfew, engage in check-ins, and, quote, use technology to know where they are, straight up to be nosy. Mm-hmm. He said, quote, "I don't know how many times I have to say it. We are not your children's keepers. You are. And parents and guardians, you have to step up," end quote, right? He actually did acknowledge the approximately 100,000 people in our city and county who have to work 2 jobs just to make ends meet. That's why he said they're, quote, "adding camera technologies to strategic locations throughout downtown that have been identified as areas of concern over the last couple of weeks," end quote, shifting more of their arsenal of resources downtown and bringing in state troopers, or as I call them, outside agitators. He didn't mention whether those parents who are working numerous jobs would be fined and forced to take parenting classes in their spare time, which apparently they have a lot of. He did, however, say he was going to meet with prosecutor Ryan Mears to discuss filing criminal charges against the parents of the 4 teenagers arrested for their alleged involvement in the July 5th, quote, "mass shooting," end quote. So there's a lot to unpack here. I mean, first, we send our sincere condolences to the families of the 2 young people killed over the weekend.
Absolutely.
You know, a 16-year-old and a 15-year-old, both of whom are boys. You know, I can't begin to imagine the pain, sadness, anger, frustration, helplessness, and so many other emotions that, you know, accompany such tragic loss. You know, I mean, Dani, I know you're a parent. I can't, you know, I don't even want to, like, you know, start thinking about that, right?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely a tragedy. And this is where it gets complicated, though, right? Because what's our response to these feelings produced by what is definitely a tragedy, right? We have to ask ourselves, why is the first and seemingly only response to such incidents isolated entirely to the police and the criminal justice system in the U.S.? It's sad to say, but over 100 people die every single day by gun violence in the United States. It's around 125 people. Now, in 2021, there were 14,300 homicides in the U.S. That same year in China, there were 178. So that year, about 40 people were killed by homicide each day in the U.S. In China, 1 person was killed by homicide like every 2 days. And I'm using China as a comparison, not only because it's so demonized, but we're talking about homicides not relative to population. Right. And China, of course, has a population of like over 4 billion, and the U.S. is around 350 million. And we're not even talking about people the U.S. government kills within its own borders or across the world, killings that aren't murders because they're sanctioned by the state. And the only answers that we've been given so far are this, right? Criminalize more people, arrest more people, fine more people, increase surveillance, and jack up the number of cops on the streets. But here's the thing. These measures might make people feel safe, but they don't actually make us safe. There's no evidence, for example, that surveillance cameras reduce violent crime or petty theft. Some studies show that they can deter vandalism, although that's not consistent. Most studies focus on England and Western Europe because they're the most densely populated with government surveillance cameras. But the ACLU studied Chicago, which has, in the words of a former U.S. Homeland Security Secretary, the most extensive and integrated surveillance network in the country. The consensus is that cameras don't reduce petty crimes, and in effect, they end up displacing them to other areas outside the proximity of the cameras. These cameras are also routinely abused by the cops and other authorities. So, a couple examples, right? A DC cop used surveillance footage to spy on a gay club to extort a former roommate. One study in England reviewed 592 hours of camera monitoring, and it found that 10% of surveillance of women lasted for more than 1 minute, and 15% less than a minute, but was clearly voyeuristic. In 2005, a San Francisco cop used the airport's cameras for 3 hours to zoom in on women's breasts and buttocks. A 2014 study published in the peer-reviewed journal Quantitative Criminology actually found, and I quote, 5 of the 6 models had at least one statistically significant environmental feature, with results in 4 models suggesting crime increases after the installation of surveillance cameras. So in other words, they installed surveillance cameras and crime increased. And of course, we're leaving the definition of crime open here.
Right.
But the same goes for the police, right? The police don't prevent crime. There's absolutely no evidence they prevent it or they deter it. They don't even really solve crimes, right? Mostly they're committing them. But obviously, the more cops you have in a given area, the more crimes they find simply because of their presence, right? And not to downplay this, right? Because one death is too many, but referring to this weekend's violence as a mass shooting is hyperbolic. Like, it's not a mass shooting, right?
No, not at all.
Two young people died, and that's tragic, but it's not a mass shooting. So what's the reason behind this, right? I mean, they're trying to conjure up feelings of fear of real mass shootings, which again are quite exceptional to the US, and they're exploiting this as an excuse to increase their bloated budgets yet again, to put more working class and oppressed people behind bars. And the politicians, well, they're exploiting this as an excuse to move violent crime back to where they want it to be, in our neighborhoods, in the neighborhoods of poor, working class, Black, and oppressed communities. Why else would the curfews they're proposing only apply to Miles Square? The cops are even pursuing stay-away orders against anyone charged with crimes for even visiting Miles Square. And that's why it made the news in the first place, right? Because it happened downtown where businesses are, right? It's all about displacing the crime. So right after this, Hogsett and Chief Bailey, gave a press release. And I want to talk about a few things about Chief Bailey's comments. So first, he said that he watched numerous public uses of illicit drugs. And then he said he couldn't count the number of parents he saw dropping their children off downtown to see the fireworks, which was a problem with that. But it also makes me wonder, like, you're the police chief and you're just sitting around like watching this stuff. Like, is that your job? Like, you're not doing anything about it? Not that I'm saying anything should be done about it, but like, supposedly your job is to like prevent this or like intervene in it, but you're just like sitting around like counting it until you can't count any higher. I don't know. And that's, of course, up to our listeners to guess how high the chief can count. So we have to look at the overall context of these shootings and this violence. It's interesting that none of the media have mentioned that on July 4th, President Trump invited the U.S. pilots who bombed Iranian civilian infrastructure last month to celebrate Independence Day with him. Their B-2 Spirit bombers, the same jets used to illegally strike Iran that dropped 14 bombs in the country, flew over the White House, and other personnel from the Air Force Base in Missouri attended. So clearly, the U.S. is an extremely violent country, much more so than any other, quote, developed country. Every single statistic bears that out. This is a social problem of considerable magnitude, and the capitalist ruling class has provided no substantive answers to the millions demanding something be done. Because, nobody wants violence in their neighborhood. The thing is that, like, why is it that the only, response is, in the automatic response is like, okay, more police, more cameras, even though that does nothing to solve it. And same thing with the, debates about gun control or, gun rights. Because these are really superficial, right, and inadequate. Because really, gun control is ultimately a tool used to increase the oppression and increase the arrest rates of oppressed people. And so we need to think about a broader program, right, that we could offer, right? So, for instance, like the socialist vision is to reduce and eliminate the violence to which millions are subjected on a daily basis, and to end the exploitation, oppression, poverty, and competition that fuel that violence. Obviously, this couldn't be achieved overnight, but under socialism, the working class has real power over issues that affect their communities. And the state would serve our interests, right? The racists and oppressors of the past would be disarmed and disempowered, basic needs would be met, and a collectively planned political, social, and economic system would be set up. Also, we would fund things that actually have been proven to work, like violence interruption, conflict resolution, and social work programs. Across the country, thousands of people in poor and working class communities are already working to reduce violence in their homes, in their neighborhoods. These violence interrupters are systematically ignored because their work doesn't fit the racist media narratives of like black on black crime. And because the government doesn't want to see autonomous grassroots organizing take off, they would diminish the role and justification for the police. I think there's many other things we could get into here, but the basic point I want to make is that, like, things like government administered background and mental health checks are not the answer. Gun control isn't the answer. And in fact, if you think about the violence downtown and who starts that violence, let's think about Devin Hunt, right? Devin Hunt was in a vocal argument with somebody downtown. It wasn't physical. There was no physical violence involved until the cops got involved. Mm-hmm. And they were the ones who beat him up, right? And shot him 4 times, I believe, right? With pepper gun. They said it was 3, but it was actually 4. Right.
I was going to say, and then they lied about everything. Right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe, like, their parents should take parenting classes and we can find them. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's a wrap for because I'm thinking about the cop who killed Adam Sykes was also, like, 23, very young. And I believe also his father was also a cop. So, I mean, like, I don't think the parenting class really would have helped anything.
That's true.
I have so many thoughts. I have so many, like, feelings. Derek hates talking about feelings.
That's not true.
Yes, it is. But I have so many thoughts and feelings. One, is it Bailey's job to sit around? Yes. That is literally his job, to answer the question. Not on paper. That is what he does, is sit around and not do anything except take my money, take your money, take listeners' money.
He can get a meeting with Ryan Mears, though.
He can get a meeting with Ryan Mears.
Damn.
When he does nothing.
Maybe that's
so
a trick.
Weird. It sounds like, it's almost like there's like a system in place so that we are not able to function in this oppressive society. Anyway, I'm reminded of segregation and redlining as you were speaking about, like, yeah, you all are not allowed in this area, right? During this certain time. Last episode, we talked about the action that we had, or not really an action, but the picnic that we had at Belmont Beach last week, which, if you're not familiar with Belmont Beach is in Hallville, and it is historically in Indianapolis. It is where Black people could go swim. That was the only place where Black people could go swim in the city. And even then, when we were swimming there, it was filled with toxins and people were dumping things there. When I say people, I mean, like, city government, not like the people who live there, obviously. And so Indiana has a long history of segregating and trying to put Black and brown people in our place. And this is just like a continuation of that history, unfortunately. Now, as an aunt and as a parent, right, I have nieces and nephews who are teenagers. My children aren't teenagers, but...
Hopefully their clothes fit them well.
You know, sometimes they don't because they're teenagers. And this is the time that they are supposed to be expressing themselves, but also they could be 40 years old and they should be able to wear whatever the hell they want to wear because, like, this is America.
That's right. Thank you very much, Dani. That was something I've never heard from Dani before, but...
But, like, we're telling children how to dress, right? What year is this? What are we talking about right now?
Yeah.
But
I can see your ankles, by the way.
You can see my ankles. You can see my knees, actually, in this. Damn. So arrest me, I guess. But just thinking about them and thinking about, on one hand, thinking about the parents, right? One of the mothers whose son died, her other son is in jail right now, right? So your condolences, and when I say your, I'm talking about Bailey, his condolences go out to the family, but yet now she is grieving in 2 different ways right now, right? Like, one of her children is dead and the other one is in jail. And she actually moved away from Indianapolis, and both of her children came back, and, like, the one who, I can't remember which one it was, but one of them, like, you know, sent her a text and was saying, yeah, I'm going to come back home right after the 4th. Like, was planning to go hang out with his friends for, you know, the celebrations, Independence Day. And is not going to come home now. You know, I cannot imagine the amount of pain that she is in to have tried to move away because of the alleged, you know, the gun violence, and both of her children are gone.
Yeah. And I mean, this isn't new. I mean, think about Independence Day and what it's celebrating, right? I mean, basically a revolution that was also a counter-revolution. You know, I mean, it was basically not entirely, but it was in many ways the reason why the initial colonies broke away from Britain is because they knew that Britain was going to abolish the slave trade. And that's why actually they made Thomas Jefferson take out the paragraphs in the original Declaration of Independence denouncing the king and the slave trade, you know, because it was all about keeping that going. So here we have like a country that's built on genocide and slavery and the most brutal, barbaric kinds of violence. And this is what we're celebrating.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously most people are just like, you know, it's a day off of work, it's a day to be a family.
Yeah,
but like,
absolutely.
That's what the state wants us to be celebrating. And so in a sense, like, isn't this fitting, right? Isn't this fitting for this holiday, right? And we need a real, like, revolution, you know, to overthrow that counter-revolution. And we need, you know, these young people to, you know, not for their parents to take parenting classes, but we got to organize them. You know, because it's clear that like they're taking matters into their own hands about the wrong things. But if we can get them organized to think smarter, think strategically, think about who the real enemy is, you know, because it's not their friend and it's not, you know, this or that little beef, you know, and the cops love it when we're, you know, upset about that stuff and we're, you know, fighting over this territory and that territory. But they hate it when we get together, you know, and we're like, wait a second. You and me, we got a common enemy, you know?
Right.
What if we got together and, you know, eliminated that?
And I think, I mean, organizing, but I'm a therapist, so I have to throw out, like, these are 15, 16, 17-year-old children, and, like, their brain's not even fully developed, right? So, no, they're not making the best decisions, but that is why community is important, right? And it goes back to that organizing piece you were just talking about. But like children being in community is so vital and so important. And, you know, I live on the east side, and a few years ago, I want to say maybe 5 years ago, probably less than that actually. But there was an initiative for the adolescents of the far east side, and it was an after-school program, getting them involved. And when the initiative was happening, crime rates went down, right? Because, kids are bored and they don't have anything to do. So when kids are bored, they do dumb stuff because that is developmentally appropriate, right? Children do dumb things. I don't know anybody who's been a teenager and didn't do dumb things.
Right. What about adults? Can we still do dumb things, or is 18 a magical age?
Derek, I don't think you count. But,
Okay.
you know, adults obviously do dumb things as well, but we're talking about kids right now. But yeah, absolutely. Kids do dumb things. Adults do dumb things. Humans do dumb things. Because
That's how you grow.
Yeah, that's how you learn. If you don't make mistakes, you're never actually learning anything, right? That is a part of being a human. But this initiative, like when the people who created it went to IMPD to ask for more money, because it was actually IMPD who gave them the funding for it. And when they asked for more money, because, hey, this is amazing, crime rates are going down, we need more funding to continue this, they didn't get it. Because working them out of a job, you know. IMPD wants crime to happen. And we see it, and then obviously not just IMPD, but police in general. The United States capitalist government wants crime to continue because that's how they make money off of our bodies. That's how they make money off of our children. And in the case of Derek, that's, you know, Derek's an adult, maybe? I don't know. But that's how they make money off of us, is when we are making these mistakes and we're not allowed to make mistakes. We're not allowed to do dumb things.
Right. And it's interesting, I'll end here, but it's interesting because this notion of childhood as a state of innocence, right, is only accessible to some. You know, you think about, it was Tamir Rice, right, the young black boy
Yeah.
who's playing with the toy gun, right? You know, and who was not. That's like, you know, what little, you know, little young boys in the United States are like taught it's good to play with like fake guns and stuff, right? Water pistols, right?
My children aren't allowed to play with guns, but that's because of Tamir Rice. So,
Oh, okay, yeah. And you know, I mean, nothing against, you know, guns and toy guns, but it's like they're denied that. Where, in fact, there's a case in Texas where this like rich white kid had repeatedly engaged in sexual assault and rape and you know, drunk driving. He's like 15 years old. They introduced affluenza as a diagnosis to get him out of the charges, right? So he's basically too rich to understand the consequences of his actions. And so he's allowed to make mistakes permanently and forever, right? He's allowed this like permanent childhood, and yet others are denied that childhood, you know, the ability to make mistakes and to make amends for them, right? To grow from them and to learn from them. Instead, you know, we're just locked up. And that's really what it's about. Like capitalism is a system where, like, you know, if you're Donald Trump, you can make any mistake any you want. You know, if you're rich, you can like make any mistake you want, you know, because, and, you know, you don't even commit a crime because you're the one who set, you know, who makes the laws, right? And determines what is and what isn't a crime. And the rest of us, right, we're punished for our crimes and we're not allowed to learn and grow from them. And our parents suffer, our communities suffer, and ultimately all of us suffer.
Well, that was the Naptown Breakdown. We'll be right back, and we'll be hearing from organizer Lexie Chaffin on ways we can keep Indianapolis safe from a murderous gang that continues to terrorize our city, also known as IMPD.
Let's say it, because they were very honest that they were building a country that was based in racism, that was based in the hatred and the genocide of Native Americans, that was designed to keep poor people out of political power.
And we're back. You're listening to Naptown People's Radio, and we are here with organizer Lexie Chaffin. Lexie is an organizer with the Indianapolis branch for the Party for Socialism and Liberation and has been engaged in the struggles for immigrant rights, the Free Palestine movement, and does a ton of work in the struggle against police terror in our city, which we'll be talking about today. Welcome, Lexie.
Hi.
All right, so I just kind of gave like an intro for you, but is there anything that I missed? I know you're doing a lot of things, so anything you want Naptown People's Radio to know that you're doing right now?
No, thank you. Just Lexie Chaffin out here doing the thing.
All right, so we are going to be talking today about the initiative that has come out of the PSL when it comes to Mask Off IMPD. Can you give the listeners kind of like a rundown? What is that initiative? Let's start there.
Absolutely. So this is a website that really takes away the anonymity from the violent IMPD officers. The police commit violence and murder with impunity. Oftentimes, info about violent officers is protected from the public by hiding their information. This is a resource for all the people in our community to really take away that anonymity and take the mask off and really give the info to the public on what's going on with that.
So this is just IMPD, right? It's just Indianapolis Police Department?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Where did this idea come from? I think this is brilliant. This is amazing. And I feel like so many people are going to be hyped to hear about this. Where did this come from?
Thank you so much. The idea really came from the void of accountability right now that we have in the IMPD. Our city deserves a resource where the people can know who the murderers are in their city. IMPD protects killer cops, and the media oftentimes just takes the IMPD statement and publishes it. So this is really going to fill that void of accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking about Gary Harrell, which we've covered on Naptown People's Radio before, but he was killed on August 3rd, 2023. And Douglas Carell, the person who murdered him, like, there are still no like photos of what he looks like. However, you've seen like Gary's like picture everywhere, and they talked about Gary's like record when Douglas Carell has literally cost the city thousands of dollars because of his brutality against Black men, not just with Gary, but with another victim as well. And so it is so important and so vital, I think, this initiative to give us a tool to be able to, recognize these murderers and recognize these people who do not have our best interests at heart and want to harm us and get paid to do so, right? Like Gary Harrell, the people who killed Eric Taylor, all of these cops are out here on paid leave, right? Which is wild. Wild that you can not just murder someone and get away with it, but you can get paid to do it. And the people that you are harming have to pay for that as well. So this is beautiful. I love this. I feel like the people of Indianapolis would love to contribute to this initiative. How can we do that?
Thank you so much. So if you have any questions about the IMPD violence, you can visit the site, and you can also contribute photos and videos of police terror to help our neighbors feel more safe. Lastly, there's resources on here to help you and your family who've been affected by IMPD, so please reach out.
I know that you all have been working with families who are victims of IMPD terror. I'm curious if they have been able to contribute to this website in any way, or if they're aware of it.
Yeah, so one of the families that we work with, Eric Taylor's family, they seem to be really excited about this website, and they want to know how they can contribute, and they want to see the site, in its full capacity, and they're excited about that. And so far, they haven't contributed anything, but I'm sure if there was a way they could, they definitely would do so as well.
Awesome. And I think some of that just comes from, like, again, when the cops kill someone, IMPD is very good at going through and scrubbing the internet from, like, photos of them and all these things, right? It's so hard to find out who these people are unless you, like, get on it immediately, I think. And when you're grieving, like, I would imagine, I haven't been in that predicament myself, but I would imagine if you're grieving and, like, that's not the first thing that's on your mind is, oh man, let me go Google this person. You probably don't even have the name. By the time you get the name of the person, their picture is already scrubbed, so that makes sense. Is there a name for the website where, when it is released, where can we go to find it?
Yes, please go to maskoff12.com. That's maskoff12.com for any information.
Okay, dope. Thank you so much, Lexie. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
This is Akeem with the Indianapolis Liberation Center. Located at 18th and Meridian Street, the Indianapolis Liberation Center envisions a world free from exploitation, imperialism, and white supremacy. We reject the divisive, dehumanizing systems of oppression and instead strive for a society rooted in mutual respect, care, cooperation, and justice. Through the joy of collective struggle, liberation is not just a dream, it is a necessity, and it is within our reach. We are not here to reform a dying system, we exist to abolish it and build something beautiful in its place.
The Liberation Center store is a one-stop shop for organizers and activists in today's struggles. We have professionally designed and packaged posters, as well as buttons, stickers, t-shirts, and a host of literature, including books, pamphlets, and more. This month, we are offering deep discounts on posters, buttons, and t-shirts. So cop yourself, a loved one, or a friend one of our Huey P. Newton or Marsha P. Johnson t-shirts. Support the struggle against IMPD terror with our Justice for Adam Sykes and Eric Taylor buttons. And show your solidarity with our brothers and sisters across the globe fighting the same forces that we are with our wide selection of prints. Now going for 3 prints for only $30. Check out a full catalog at indieliberationcenter.org/store.
All right, welcome back to Naptown People's Radio. I'm here with Matthew Gunning, who was wrongfully convicted and wrongfully sentenced to 9 years in prison, served 5.5 years in prison, I believe, and was released in 2020. Is that correct, Matthew?
Yeah, March 31st, 2020.
Well, welcome to the show, Matthew Gunning.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
It's a pleasure to hear your story and the little bit of it that we've heard so far. I know that there's much more to it. What we wanted to talk about today was your experience with art and incarceration, both before, during, and after. But to begin, I wanted to ask you, after you were wrongfully convicted and sentenced, what did you think going into prison would be like?
Being in jail for 10 months prior to going to prison, I was definitely told a myriad of things from different people. And to be honest with you, I really didn't know what to expect. I expected to be afraid, and I was wrong. I wasn't afraid when I got there. I was terrified. So I definitely expected a level of that. I didn't expect it to be quite as bad, the fear factor, when I got there. But it was a quick learning curve to kind of overcome and adapt.
And I know that I saw we have a piece here that you brought called "Who is Really in Prison," and that it won the Gold Award for the Urban Justice Center's nationwide incarcerated artist competition in 2018. So while you were still incarcerated, of course. And the gold prize, that's like the first prize, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So art must have played some role in your prison experience. And could you tell me a little bit more about that, about what art, how you were able to make art in prison, and then two, the role that art played during your experience and your time there, serving this time which you shouldn't have been serving in the first place?
Sure. So while I was in jail, I actually remembered that I loved art. I had put that aside for many years because I was a father. And so like a lot of us do when we start a family, we kind of put the things that we want to do and things that we like on the back burner. So when I remembered that, I thought that would be a great way for me to try to interact with people in a positive way. And so I just sat down while I was in jail and they give you these little pen tubes. And I started drawing on notebook paper with pen tubes. And then people would ask me to draw stuff for them on their letters to their loved ones. And then on the bus ride into the prison, a guy said you should sit down and like draw cards and stuff, and people will pay you for them, and you can earn money that way. And it's a great way to, it's an icebreaker. You can meet people. And I kind of started doing that, but I wasn't really interested in making $2 or $3 here or there, drawing cards for people. But I did start that way. And then it just kind of progressed from there, where there was a weird set of circumstances that materials became available to me. And then, of course, that was accelerated at a later time in prison when I was put on an art crew. And then there was pretty much endless types of supplies available to me at that time. So as that happened, the progression of that happened, so the progression of my art and the quality of work that I was putting out based on the materials I was able to gather. So it was an interesting way that happened. Kind of started with cardboard pizza boxes and side panels of toilet paper boxes and copy paper boxes, and then progressed from there.
Yeah, I'm curious. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? Like, how did it come to be? You said, strange circumstances. How did it come to be that your first paintings were on cardboard pizza boxes, or, the side panels of a cardboard box?
Sure. Why I was, again, running out of the limited materials that I had, and I had a suggestion from a former inmate and friend, Vernon Bateman, to use, the cardboard from a pizza box. And he kind of encouraged me to do that. And as he saw me creating things on cardboard, which is a medium I hadn't worked with, he encouraged me to continue to do that, and so I did. So then it was just a matter of, okay, so where do I get these other pieces of cardboard? And prison is a place born out of thinking inside the box. So you're literally in a facility where you have to make the most of what you have available to you, and there's not a whole lot of going outside of that. You have to you have a certain set of stuff in there, and those things are what you're able to use. And so Vern had encouraged me to do that, and I actually really liked working on cardboard. I liked the way it looked. I liked the way it felt. So I continued to do that.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And that's it goes against what we think about in prison. Because earlier we were talking and you said, that Vernon, who we know well here at the Indianapolis Liberation Center and the PSL, and who most people in the city should know if they don't know.
Right.
And you can go to freevernon.org or vernonsversions.art to learn more. But you were like, here's somebody who I never would have really likely met or been friends with, right?
Correct.
And he's the one who introduced us. So it's is that a singular? Was that a one-off experience, or were you able to, through art, connect with other individuals, people from other groupings or identities, what have you, through art?
Art was the connective material, the conduit to every relationship, positive relationship that I had with staff and with other inmates. And I don't think that I would have made it through my time had I not had that connection and been able to use that to facilitate the relationships that I had. So, I always say that art, saved my life. And I literally feel like it did in prison. It did save my life. And, I do want to say this. The interesting thing about Vernon is one thing I want to point out is that I know all you guys know him and you know his story. And I have a different perspective because I lived part of his story with him. Like, we lived together. I lived his story with him, and he lived my story with me. So I have a perspective about Vernon that fortunately most can't have. And I can tell you that whatever it is you guys think is special about him out here, he was that guy there. The thing about Vernon, he's consistent. He's a consistently caring individual, and he looked out for me in a way that, to be honest with you, there was no reason for him to do that. Mm-hmm. But I think we just saw something in each other, and it was through art that we made the connection. So, grateful for his friendship, grateful for his advice, grateful for his participation in my story and him allowing me to participate in his.
Yeah, and we are too, because if it weren't for Vernon, we wouldn't have connected with you. And even though we're just beginning this relationship, hearing you explain and talk about one of the two paintings that you have out there, who is really in prison, I can understand why you and Vernon connected and what you and Vernon saw in each other. Sure. And how you could build a genuine friendship that maybe started with art but far exceeded art.
Absolutely. I mean, the conversations and the interactions that we had definitely were outside the scope of art as well. You never really know when you're there if this is a prison friend, if the friendship is equally as reciprocal, if it's real or not. And I never questioned that with Vern. I just felt like I would never see him again. And I don't know why I felt that way, but I just felt like maybe we were put in each other's path for a purpose, and then we weren't anymore. And I thought I would never see him again. And the fact that I now have reconnected with him and I have seen him again has given me a chance to thank him, which I didn't get the chance to do before I left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and can you tell us how it was? Because you only recently reconnected with Vernon. Is that correct?
Yes, very recently.
Yeah. So how did that happen?
So he wandered into a restaurant of a friend of mine who I've known since I was a teenager. My friend said that he saw Vern and immediately felt something, and he approached him, and I think he said he gave him a hug. And Vern shared his story with him, and my friend said, sounds an awful lot like a friend of mine. And very shortly they connected the dots, and they knew that it was me. And so my friend facilitated, Vern and I reconnecting in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a weird set of circumstances that was just unexplainable why, but grateful that it happened. It was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, he told me about it later that day. I remember because he was like, "Oh, you have to meet this guy. You'll never believe what happened."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that is truly remarkable. And I just want to go back to that notion once more, because we live in a society where it seems like everything is trying to divide us from one another.
Sure.
Like it's like everything you watch on the television, on the news, it's like, don't talk to this group of people or this kind of person, or somebody who's been in jail, right? Like a formerly incarcerated person. They are all the same or something, right?
Sure.
And so they keep us all in our little boxes, almost like all in our little cells. And so it's almost like even in prison they try to keep you in your cells, but you are able to like get out of your cell by, for example, having your artwork leave the prison and go out into the world. And I mean, was that your experience in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that prison is a microcosm of society, and it's also this is how I try to explain it to people. Prison is like everything you've ever seen on television about prison, and nothing like anything they've never shown you. The thing is that you'll never see the truth on television or in a movie. Everything that I've ever seen doesn't. It just kind of, they dig with a spoon, and to be honest with you, you need a backhoe.
Yeah.
It's the only way to really understand it. And to be honest with you, the only way to really understand it is to talk to someone like myself or Vern, so that you can get the truth about how it really is. And even that type of system is set up to put people in certain groups, to divide people, to create a hierarchy. There's not enough staff members to actually control all the prisoners. So they have to set it up in a way where it's kind of a self-policing thing. And so certain people are rewarded, certain people are punished. And then the majority of people, they just kind of keep, floating right in the middle. And that helps them facilitate, their daily babysitting, if you will, of the situation. And it's really an interesting system as far as how it's ran. But the only word that I can think of, it's gross. And it's not anything. Like, there's stories that I won't even tell my parents. There's stories that I won't probably ever tell you, because with all due respect, you can't handle that story or those kind of stories, because it's just beyond what you could fathom. And so the thing is, there's problems with the way things are done and what happens. And to be in an environment like that, when you don't, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, when you don't belong in that environment, is it's the most terrifying thing that I think a person can go through, with all due respect to anyone else's story.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I will say it's not your humble opinion. I will say, just for the listeners out there, you can, on our objective assessment of the circumstances, you did not belong in there.
Right.
And yet you were there, and you're here, most importantly. And you're here, and we're together now fighting for, one, because we want you to be heard. We want your story to be heard. And two, because your name needs to be cleared.
Sure.
Right? Not
Absolutely.
just for you, but for all the other people, all the other gunnings out there, right?
Yeah. I mean, most importantly, for my children. I don't want my children to ever associate their father with something that he was accused of that he didn't do. And that's why I wouldn't sign a plea deal. I was offered a plea deal. I refused to sign it. I'm not going to ever admit to a court or anyone that I did something I didn't do. I went back to the same judge that sentenced me for reunification hearing. I was granted everything I asked for at the reunification hearing. That's a whole nother story, but he gave me everything I asked for. And he knew that a mistake had been made. And I believe that he knows that. And so, it's just, I need people to understand that there's people like myself and Vern that are innocent. And I know that's hard for society sometimes because, it's become part of the vernacular and the culture that like, oh yeah, everyone's innocent that goes to everyone. No one did it, right? And everyone goes there and finds religion and all these stereotypical things, right? Some of those things take place, but it's not the reality of what's going on. The reality is there are people that are incarcerated that did not do the crime all across the nation and the world. Yeah. But particularly here in the United States, there are people that can get caught in the system that didn't do it. And if your skin color is not the right color, or you don't have the right amount of money, or you don't know the right people, you're going to go to prison.
We hope to have you back, and we will have you back, actually. That's a commitment to talk more about the actual case and the trial itself. But
sure.
Just to give listeners a sense of, of the injustice, the string of injustices, can you tell us what the judge said to the courtroom just before sentencing you?
Yeah, the judge said right out of his own mouth, for the record, I would like to state that I played golf with the victim's father a few times prior to this. And everyone was in shock when he said that. And my attorney didn't object. And then he began reading my sentence. So, and to be honest with you, that's one of like 20 different things, but it's pretty egregious.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. And I'll be honest with you, if you look at my case and you just read about it on the surface, it doesn't sound great.
Right.
That's how a lot of these things are. That's by design.
Right.
I didn't write the probable cause.
Right.
I didn't do any of that. I wasn't interviewed. I was never interviewed by the police ever as to what happened. I wasn't interviewed. No one asked me. I had no idea. I had no idea when I was arrested. I had no idea why I was being arrested. Mm-hmm. They didn't tell me. Yeah. So, there's just so many layers to this. Yeah. And, I've heard you, I think I've heard you say this about other people. I'm not looking for pity, and I'm not looking for people to feel sorry for me. I want to be heard. I want to be understood, and I want people to understand that not only did I not do it, but there are other people out there that didn't do the things that they were incarcerated for. Did they maybe do, or have people done things or said things that they shouldn't have?
I have.
People do that all the time, and they don't rise to the level of a crime.
Yeah.
And that's what's going on with my case. I did not commit the crime that they ultimately sent me to prison for all that time. I didn't do it.
Yeah. I mean, and the fact that they were charging you with 11 felonies, offered you a plea deal, and you neglected, you turned that down. I think that speaks for itself.
They dropped 9 charges on the telephone immediately. They were willing to drop 9 charges immediately, and just keep 2, a misdemeanor and a felony.
Mm-hmm. And you said no because you are innocent. Well,
it's not exactly what I said. There was some foul language associated with it.
Okay.
But I was pretty adamant about absolutely not. And this was the night before the trial.
Wow.
In the 11th hour, I think they thought they had me in a corner, and they'd thrown all this stuff at me, and I just, at that point they were hanging 20 years over my head, and I said, well, in 20 years, I'll be able to explain to my kids why I went to prison, because I didn't want them to think that I did something to their mother that I did not do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't imagine the amount of courage and bravery and integrity that it took to make that decision, or to, instinctively do that. And I'm glad, and I think that the entire community will be glad once they hear this and they meet you and they see you and your work, that it wasn't 20 years. And fortunately, which is a strange way to phrase it, but fortunately, right, 5.5 years, and here we are, and you're able to tell this story, and we're going to work to clear your name. And between July 21st and August 2nd at Gallery 42 on Washington Street, there's going to be a series of events called Art for Exoneration that Vernon T. Bateman is organizing. And you can go meet and see the work of Matthew Gunning during that time period. It's likely going to be the first Friday in August. So for all the listeners out there, please put that on your calendars. We'll be posting about it on social media as it approaches. And thank you, Matthew, for coming on Naptown People's Radio. We really appreciate you telling your story, and we're inspired, and we're even more dedicated to doing the work that we do here to liberate you and to liberate everybody, because if one person's oppressed, we're all oppressed.
Absolutely. And I can't remember which president said it. Somebody said it. I think it might have been Roosevelt, that it's a far greater crime to send one guilty person to prison than to let, or one innocent person to prison than to let 100 guilty men go free. And I believe that. Like, it's a crime to send innocent people to prison. So I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I'm thankful, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be free.
Yeah. Well, we're glad that you're free, and we're going to get you truly free.
Yes.
And that's it for this segment. We'll be right back after a short break. You're listening to Naptown People's Radio.
I know you're asking today, how long will it take? How long? Not long. How long? Because you shall reap what you sow. Yes, sir. How long? Not long.
And we're back on Naptown People's Radio. Before we get to the actions that are coming up this week, Dani's got our Circle City shout out for the week. Dani, who do we got this week?
So this week's Circle City shout out goes to the artist we just heard Matthew Gunning speaking about, Vernon T. Bateman. So in 1998, Vernon T. Bateman was wrongfully convicted of rape, criminal deviant conduct, and confinement. Vernon, who was only 18 years old at the time, was at his home, asleep during the alleged crime, although the police never asked for an alibi. Shocker. He was given 2 30-year sentences to be served concurrently. And despite the alleged victim recanting her testimony 3 separate times in 2003 and 2004, and the family pleading for his exoneration, Vernon wasn't released until 2023, 26 years after he was initially incarcerated. But he was only freed from physical captivity. Bateman immediately entered a social prison. Despite the overwhelming evidence proving his innocence and confirming the corruption behind his initial conviction, Bateman still lives under arbitrary, targeted, costly, and unconstitutional parole stipulations. This is an injustice to him, the alleged victim, and our community. In spite of these injustices, Vernon is able to find beauty even in the most difficult of situations. He was first exposed to art by his grandfather, Bill Franklin. Franklin made ends meet through art. He was a painter, a poet, a farmer, and so much more, and he passed that artistic talent on to his grandson, a talent that Vernon utilized as a way to cope with his imprisonment. Vernon learned to draw before he learned how to read. Perhaps that's one reason why his entrance into the art world came into the form of Mommy, I Want to Fly, the first of several children's books he wrote and illustrated while in solitary confinement. He published the book to parent his child after her mother was killed by a drunk driver. He continues to astound people with his art today, showcasing his art in places such as the District Theater, the Skyline Club, the Athenaeum, and he's been the keynote presentation at the first annual Pennsylvania Social Justice Speaking Tour in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's been a guest lecturer at DePaul University, just to name a few cool things that Vernon has done. If you've ever been in my therapy office, he also painted the beautiful portrait that's in there as well. So I love Vernon. Vernon's amazing. If you're interested in ways to better support Vernon, there is the Coalition to Free Vernon T. Bateman, which launched on February 12th, 2025, through the Indianapolis Liberation Center. You can visit freevernon.org to learn more and sign the petition. Also, check out Art for Exoneration, the Vernon T. Bateman Experience between July 21st and August 2nd at Gallery 42. You can find more information about that at indyliberationcenter.org. Vernon is a reminder of how this system treats Black men, but is also a constant reminder of how your comeback can always, and actually usually is always, better than your fallback. Although, almost 30 years of prison for a crime you didn't commit is much bigger than a fallback. If you ever meet Vernon, you will meet the warmest and kindest person ever. He will literally give you the shirt off his back. Like, one time I told him I liked his shirt, and he was like, "Oh, you can have it." So that's the kind of person that Vernon is.
And if I'm with him, I'm going to be like, Vernon, keep that shirt. Because whenever he gets money, he's like giving it away, I second that, of course. Vernon is like truly one of the most humble and kind and caring people I've ever met. Even my father, who likes, I don't know, as many, like fewer people than Chris Bailey can count, was immediately like, "Oh, I love this guy," and there's just something about him, like immediately. Everybody who meets him, Mm-hmm. And so you're going to have an opportunity to do that at Art for Exoneration. And also, you're going to have an opportunity to learn more about the struggle for his exoneration, which is going to end this summer. This is a summer that we free Vernon T. Bateman. On Monday at 12 p.m. at the Indianapolis Liberation Center, we're holding a press conference to talk about Vernon's case and the upcoming art show, which is tied to his struggle for exoneration. We will hear from his lawyers with the Innocence Project. We'll hear from his mother, from Vernon, from volunteers with the Coalition to Free Vernon T. Bateman. Again, that's 12 o'clock at the Indianapolis Liberation Center this upcoming Monday. Today, remember to check out maskoff12.com and help unmask these killer cops terrorizing our communities. And tomorrow, on Thursday at 6 p.m. at the Indianapolis Liberation Center, we hope to see you for a town hall where we can come up with real solutions to dealing with the violence that the media is dramatizing, but is nonetheless real, and that we need to address, and that only we, the people, can address. And that's going to be tomorrow, 6 p.m. at the Indianapolis Liberation Center. So that's it for this episode of Naptown People's Radio. This week, in addition to asking you all to attend the events that I just mentioned, also please do go to freevernon.org and sign the petition. We want everybody in the community to sign this petition. Literally every single signature counts. If you found today's discussion useful, pass it on, leave a comment, and listen for our next episode to drop. You can email us at producer@naptownpeoplesradio.com. The road ahead is long, but we walk it together. Study with your comrades, build with your community, and always remember, theory without action is paralysis, but action without theory is chaos. Once again, I'm your host, Derek Ford, here with my co-host,
Dani Abdullah.
Stay dangerous, stay disciplined, and stay in the struggle.
We trying to create a movement. We got a chance to do something in Indiana that brothers like myself been talking about for the last 40 years. When I first became political and we was organized behind the walls in the 80s and 90s, some of the stuff that we doing now with the different programs and the different institutions that we have and things like the Indy Center is things that we used to talk about and dream about doing. And now we doing them. See what I'm saying? We doing it. And we got to keep that momentum going. And it's also generation. So as the next generation come up, you know what I'm saying? It's on y'all to take it to the next level and take it to the next stage.
Salute. Shout out support.